I'm gonna do that over again. That was horrible. That was garbage. Welcome back to the Side by Side Guys Offroad Podcast. I am on location in Post Falls, Idaho at CW Wraps with the one and only Sammy CW. Is that what you are? Like? Sam Carlino from CW Wraps. Sammy, how are you doing, bud?
Yeah, that's what I go by on Instagram. Yeah.
So we're at CW Wraps. We got a lot to talk about. But before we get into maybe some interesting things about wrapping, let's learn about you and your history with the company and everything else. Introduce yourself, where you're from, and the business and what you do here.
My name is Sam Carlino. Go by Sammy CW on Instagram. That's how a lot of people know me. I started CW Wraps. It's been a little over a decade now, and started out as cart wrappers. We were golf
carts, huh?
Golf carts. That was advertising. That was all we were doing, and
so you were doing like the signage?
Yeah, just wrapping golf carts.
The full thing, or just like the placards?
Full thing.
Okay.
Yep. But it was I needed to make money.
Yeah.
That was not taking off like I wanted. So we started like, hey, we'll do your windows, we'll do your vehicle, and it just evolved from there. And then that has just exploded. So now here we are, 11, 12 years later, and CW Wraps and Marketing, cruising. So, it's been a growing process from the very beginning. Didn't really know where it was going to go. And now with where we're at, I wouldn't change a thing. So
yeah, you guys are definitely busy. Yeah. So when you started CW, is that like slang? Am I gonna get beat up by the gang out back if I call it CW?
No. So
all right.
CW Wraps, and everybody just started saying CW, and so it's just been everybody just CW. Yeah.
So where did CW come from? What's behind the CW?
So cart wrappers was Cart Wrappers CW, and then when we created the whole thing so we didn't lose our clientele from Cart Wrappers, we started CW Wraps and Marketing. That way it had that carryover from Cart Wrappers. People understood it. And to this day, I've got customers still call us Cart Wrappers.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to start calling you that. Everyone calls our UTVs goat carts, right?
Yes.
So we'll call it Cart Wrappers. I thought it was Carlino Wraps or something like that,
Carlino's Way is kind of the hidden one, but we just don't tell everybody.
That's the secret employee definition?
Yes.
Gotcha. So before Wraps, what was your history? Like what kind of industry were you in, and what did you do before that?
I was, from being a kid, all I wanted to be was a fireman.
Really?
Yeah. And so I was a fireman for a lot of years. I was a fireman for 11 years, I think it was. Fireman here in Coeur d'Alene, Hayden. Okay. So I was volunteer and then wildland, and then I became full-time firefighter. Medic, did that for several years. As an owner of a company, you learn what you're good at, and it didn't take me too long to figure out I was not meant for civil service. I had to be more just that entrepreneurial, and moving. And when I left the fire department, I was actually going to go to California, fight fires. I ended up getting snagged by a friend of mine. Said, why don't you come up here to Dave Smith's up in Kellogg, right?
Okay, yeah.
Says, just come sell cars for a little while, make a buck. And I'm like, man, here I'm like a fireman back in the day. Everybody respects you. And then he's saying, go be a fireman, which I was like, that's like
a salesman. Yeah.
That's two different levels of where you want to be at.
Like not even like the accessories or anything, just the car salesman.
Yep. Just selling new trucks. And it was new trucks. I'll do that. So went up there and I spent, ended up being up there for almost 10 years.
Wow. Really? It's funny. I've talked to a number of people that have their career shifts kind of all went through Dave Smith. Mm-hmm. There's like Corbin out here and like a bunch of these guys that all were.
Chris is a good friend. His wife, they're amazing people. We do all their stuff, obviously. And a lot of those relationships that I built, it was an amazing experience for me because I learned about a lot of sales and I became a manager. And so all that stuff ties into what we do here. Right. There's, in the very beginning, there was sales. Nobody knew me. I didn't have 32,000 followers on Instagram and all this stuff. It was.
Were you loud back then too, or?
Yes. Yeah. Never been too quiet. But I was younger, more energy. I mean, I just knocked on doors.
Right.
That's
So
all I did, day in and day out.
So it's interesting. I've noticed that there's a number of people in like the off-road industry that have come from the firefighter, EMS, like that kind of industry, that group.
Correct.
And I find it interesting that the people that come from that and evolve into, a lot of them evolve into entrepreneurial ventures. And I think it's kind of like a dynamic of that kind of character, that person that their brain is just laser focused on stuff. And if they get bored with it, they have to move to something that's more challenging, something that pushes them harder.
Right.
Is that something that you felt during that time?
Oh yeah. I think I have a little bit of ADD, just, a hint of it. So
all the eyes around the office just rolled a little bit.
So, I don't sit still real well. Like I'll actually get anxiety if I try and slow down too much. Like and so I have a lot of things. I just go. I don't slow down really well. I try and manage it better. The biggest thing is just staying on track, and with CW, I've started, I think, 4 or 5 other subsidiary companies, DBAs, as I've been here. Just because my head never stops, I don't really stop. So it's all good. I have fun.
So you were saying that's about a decade ago. So that would put us, early 2000s. A lot's changed.
Yeah.
In that time span, especially not only with the vehicles that are getting wrapped, but with the technology you're wrapping with. Kind of give us some perspective on what you were doing back then compared to, how it's evolved over time.
Yeah, in 2010, and I should clarify too, like during that span, even when I was a fireman, I started doing pinstriping. So that's how I started. That would have been the late 90s, 95 to 2000. I started doing
like freehand brushing.
No, I did the vinyl stuff, but then, the quick little 2 pinstripe, 5/16, 3/16 down the side of the vehicle. And then they started.
So you're to blame for my F-150, my ugly white F-150 with the pinstripes. It's on you.
I've seen cars that I did 20 years ago still running around with pinstripes, or remember the old like monsoon graphics. So, they put just those goofy graphics.
Yeah,
so I started doing that stuff. And I always did that, even when I was, finishing up being a fireman, when I was working up at Smith's for a while. And after both of those, when I knew I had to do something on my own, I just knew that was the direction I wanted to go. I wanted to start a company where people could come in, have some fun, hopefully their feet, when they hit the floor in the morning, their eyes don't roll back in their head and they're like, oh, It's taken me 12 years, really, I think, to get the company to that point. I mean, the hard part being somebody that's a little bit high energy and little ADD, my push and my drive can be a little overwhelming.
For sure.
And then I push that through other people and, expectations, what I think should be done compared is maybe not as, accurate. I needed to learn to chill, relax. Right. And it's taken 12 years to get there, but it's a lot better now. I think the culture here, I think what I wanted to build is actually here, the right crew. And so now, after doing that, to revert back, doing all of that stuff and then starting this pinstripe, little graphics, all that kind of stuff, we started doing the golf carts, and then I started tweaking around on cars and then trucks, and then it just evolved. Material-wise is, every year right now, 3M, Avery, and then all these other companies now, they're just pushing.
Right.
Everyone wants to be better. They're changing up their materials, the slidability, the tackiness, printability, and
we've talked in our previous podcast with other manufacturers about material science and how things have really progressed over the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's finally coming to market, right? The material science takes forever to develop and to get to production, right? Especially when you're talking about the scale that these manufacturers are putting product out, right?
Right.
And so when we talk about, like you were talking about some of those attributes of the vinyl you're using, I can only imagine that just the way you apply it, the way you work with it, the opportunity to print on it or not print on it, or to, multi-layer it or whatever has really changed over the last 10 years.
That was a huge one. printing, right, hasn't been around forever and ever. We just would layer. We'd cut vinyl and layer vinyl, and I mean the weeding and masking for guys that own sign stuff are going to get it, right? I mean, labor intensive,
right?
I mean, just hours of just sitting there picking out vinyl and doing things. Now, I mean, like my truck, you can do a whole design, everything, run it through the printer, and it's all in one fell swoop. The material itself, I mean, you can print on colored material, not just white now. You got silver metallics, you got reflectives, you can wrap with reflective. I mean, it's just the insanity, I would say, in the last 10, 12 years, from like 2010 till now, is really where I see from 2000 to 2010, it was becoming a thing, right? Somebody'd say, they go, what do you do?
The industry was starting to develop.
Right. I was a rapper. And I mean, most of the people I talked to thought like sandwich wraps, right? Like they didn't even know what a wrap was.
You sell tortillas?
Yes. Yeah.
Like
a rapper. Oh my gosh. So
I don't know. Sammy D-Dub would be cool. We should start that. Tim's over here shaking his head.
But now, people are starting to get it. I mean, even I was just over getting furniture, and a lady there was like, man, is that a wrap on you? I mean, so this is an older guy. I don't know exactly, probably about my age, so I can say old, 45, 50 years old. And she even knew what a wrap was, where I can tell you 10 years ago, 12 years ago, people 15 years ago had no clue.
Right.
I mean, you do it, and the science in the material and then the learning of the application has probably been the biggest thing.
So let's talk a little bit about the process, because I want to get into some educational stuff in a bit, but the process of going from ideation to application, what does that look like for you guys? I mean, that process itself has changed quite a bit as well. Not only with just some of the software tools that you have, but I remember back in the old days, I would go to some sign shops that were doing some stuff like this.
Right.
And they were literally applying and cutting, and then applying and cutting and applying and cutting and doing everything by hand. And it took a real artisan to like do both the physical and the design.
Yep.
Even down to like numbers and letters and all that stuff. They would use, maybe a stencil and outline it, then they would hand cut it and do some other stuff like that.
Crazy.
That really changes not only the process, but the technology improvements have changed the labor requirements and, things like that and all that upfront stuff. How has that led into like your employees and how you like develop the business around that?
It's industry wise, it's a pretty labor intensive business, right? I mean, simply put, we're an all-in-one shop. So you have customer walks through the door, they meet with you and they say, I want to wrap my truck, right? We'll use a truck or even a side-by-side. We can use that right now, right? So I want to wrap my side-by-side. So now it's like what year, what model, all these things come into play. So we've got all the templating and all the things we got to know. And like we talked about, you got to go out there, what type of material is it? Is it the new skins, old skins, all this kind of stuff? So they meet with a project manager, sets the project up, and then they have to get with a designer. And now we have designers, and a designer that's going to template and design a wrap to fit a 3D thing. I mean, it's a lot different than, hey, I can design your business cards. That's flat stock, 2x3, bang it out. This has got an angle, it's got curves, it's got this and that, and you've got to take all of that into account. Something that is 3 feet tall but got 3 or 4 bends in it and sharp things, all of a sudden is 42 inches or whatever. And so you got to take that into account, proof it, go through the process. Finally, you're like, okay, we've got it templated, we've got it designed, and then we have the printers in the back, right? So we got to choose the right material, got to print it off. Everything gets laminated.
How many types of material do you think you stock?
Jeez. I just met with my accountant and went over that, and he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, right now, I mean, I'd have to say we have between $60,000 and $80,000 worth of just vinyl.
Raw stock. Yeah. And not only is it just the colors, it's thicknesses, it's durability styles, it's laminates, it's all sorts of different stuff.
Matte finish, gloss finish, satin finish, brushed finish, tackier, right? For skins on a side-by-side, right? That material with them developing stuff to be easier to move, the slidability, they call it, repositionable. It makes it so when we're putting on vehicles, it doesn't just slap on there, right? And, oh, geez, it's stuck.
One try.
So it's got air release. It helps you out to an extent. But when we do side-by-sides, a lot of time we'll use a higher tack material because it has to grab on there. Right. And that tends to make it a little more work, because once you put it on there, I mean, the goal, right, is it stays there. So
right.
Once you put it on, it's there. And then a lot of heat and roll. We you don't want to overstretch things. And that's where I was saying, I mean, the installation part of it nowadays has evolved tremendously.
As long as you're educated. I know that
Yes.
you posted a number of times about
Yes.
under-trained employees.
Yes.
But before we get into some of that technical stuff, let's talk about some of the projects you've done. I think the first one that I was aware of, like personally, was the Birdie stuff and the custom trucks and stuff like that. So kind of give us maybe some of those first couple like big projects that like kind of really opened your eyes and made a change for, the way you approach, what you do and some of the fancy stuff that you can actually accomplish.
Yeah. You bring it up, and I mean, it's crazy to think, years ago I was just,
golf carts,
doing golf carts and hoping to make a few bucks. Right.
Right.
And now we have all these things like you're talking about. We've, wrapped for the DeBirdies on the Discovery Channel. We filmed 2 years with the DeBirdies when they were out of Pismo Beach, California. Total random. I'll make a really long story short. I was actually in meetings with Discovery Channel at SEMA to discuss a rap show. Chatting with them. Some guy comes,
DJ Sammy.
So yeah. So they come, some guy comes running in the back, and I turn around, I look at him, and he's like, I had my C-Dub shirt on, and he goes, "Hey, are you a rapper?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Man, can you come here? I need your help." And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Buy Discovery, So I take off with this guy, and he goes, "Hey, my name's Doug. I'm Sammy. Nice to meet you." He says, "I just need you to check this out, help me out, make this, there." And I'm learning more of it. Like I've been going to SEMA, but now it's becoming a little bit more. I might have a rig there or two there, and I'm like, it's becoming more important. So we walk in, we walk around a corner, and here I am in the Ford booth. Which, if you've ever been to SEMA, like there's SEMA, and then there's
it's a pretty small booth.
Even Christmas. So it was amazing. I walk around the corner, and here's this black Ford Raptor, and everyone that has watched the DeBirdies will have known this truck. Him and his boy Brad built it. It's all matte black. They had somebody do it, and it wasn't a bad job. It just wasn't where it needed to be for Battle of the Builders.
Gotcha.
So in Battle of the Builders, if you go to SEMA, Battle of the Builders is absolutely intense. I mean, you've got the Chip Fooses and Kindig and all these guys. I mean, it's insane. I mean, the level of
top
skill.
tier.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like they're a whole nother level. So. He's like, "Hey, I need you to work on this." And I mean, I'm soaking this in right then, right? Just going, I'm in the Ford booth. I'm working with these guys. And then he starts jabbering, and I'm figuring out who these guys are. And I'm going, where am I at? What am I doing? Right? I mean, this is just
Not
insane.
in Kansas anymore.
Nothing that I expected myself to ever be in a position of.
Right.
It just wasn't on the radar. So I do it up, clean it, and it turned out really nice. It does good, and I think...
Were you actually wrapping, or were you fixing and reapplying, or what were you doing?
Fixing, reapplying, cleaning it up. There's just some techniques, just really finishing it out so that when you do a Battle of the Build, right? I mean, they're looking at...
every line, yeah.
I mean, it's insane. So went over the whole thing. It probably took me 3-4 hours. Finished that rig up, and... jabbered with them, and Doug, it was immediate. That guy is probably one of the coolest people I've ever met. Hit it off, and it was like we'd been best friends. So I finish that, I bail. He's like, and want to chat with you some more. And so I said, sure. And I give him my card. He gives me his. We got some stuff working, and I want to chat with you. And I said, okay. So he calls me, I don't know, a few weeks later. Says, "Hey, we're working with Discovery Channel. Would you be interested in being our rap guy?" And I was like, sure. I mean, but at the same time, there's always that reserve or that reservation,
Is
right?
this really
like,
happening?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, "Hey, I'm going to bring you 100 vehicles to rap."
Right.
And they bring 2, right? But
Yeah.
they want the discount up front.
Yep.
So I'm like, well, yeah, I'm in. You let me know. And so he calls me, and he says, "Hey, this is working." I said, "Great. Let me know. Keep me in the loop." Goes again, I don't know, probably a month. things are getting better. It's getting close. Great. Let me know. I just kind of let it roll, but we would chat and our relationship continued to build. Next time he calls, he goes, Sammy, you got a minute? I said, sure. He goes, hold on. Hands the phone off to Steve. He is the owner of Half Yard Productions, which is filming Twin Turbos. And he goes, Sammy, when can you be here? And I'm like, well, when do you need me? He's like, tomorrow? That was how and I'm like, I don't know, you know what I mean?
Right. And at that time, how many people were in the shop? Because, I mean, even now today, you're still pretty heavily invested in the workflow of the shop.
Yep.
And you know, someone dips out, someone has to call out, something like that. It impacts your workflow and your production.
Yeah.
So even I can imagine someone saying, hey, can you be here tomorrow halfway across the country?
Yes. It changes. I used to run a few more people. We're running a little less than we used to, just more effectively, more efficiently, right? As an owner, you're always looking to manage things, be more profitable, et cetera. But having the right people in the right place has been huge. But when I have to dip out, I have another guy. You do who's going to be installing?
Who does the shimmy?
And most everything runs pretty well without me. It's just usually higher end projects or things like that I'll really jump into. So I was like, what do we need? What are we doing? He says, this is what we're doing. And I think it was 3 days later, I was on a plane and heading down. Showed up. Don't know what I'm doing. I've never been in this position, even with you, like mics and doing that. I have nothing. And I show up and they got production guys running over. They're putting mics on you, this and that. And they're like,
putting stuff down your shirt, reaching up here.
Yeah, they have zero give a cares about your space, right? They are all up in you, do their thing. And I was like, all right, what do I do? And they're like, you just do you, boo. That was it. And I think, I don't even remember the first one. I think the first one was a drift truck, right? So I had to print the drift truck. I mean, design, print, everything, have it ready to go. We go down there and that's 1,000 horsepower drift truck. I mean, this was a huge thing back then, right? Nobody's seen this, done this. Brad just absolutely kills it. And we have that. Everybody loves it. We become what they call glory hogs, you know, because they do these amazing builds, right? And nobody's like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Then we show up and we make it look really pretty in a day or two. And they're like, oh, this is unbelievable. And the guys love that in the shop. They were super excited. You know, after 3 months of fab, I come in for 2 days and all of a sudden it looks amazing. But I'll take it. So we did that one and then it just rolled from there.
Right.
And I ended up staying with the DeBertis. We've become family. Brad, Doug, they now live in Mooresville, North Carolina. That's kind of race central, right? I mean, that's where it's at. Doing bunches of builds. I've done stuff with them. The performance truck. Brian Deegan did a Hellcat Jeep. That was a Hellcat swap in the Jeep. Did that one. That was an insane by myself.
And that was before everybody had them.
OD Green, yes. That thing, it had like TSL boggers, you know, and it literally flung like football-sized mud clods. Like if you were behind it, there's a good chance you get knocked out. It was insane. Joey Logano did a F-150 in super matte white, which we ended up having to remove, you know, a couple months down the road after the show and everything else because it had no glare. Right. And when it was in the sunshine, it was so bright it actually hurt your eyes. It looked like a light bulb. It was insane.
It'd almost be like a reflective, even though it's not.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, we had drift truck, Joey's Logano's truck, Brian Deegan, that truck. Then we jumped into the performance truck. And that was really, I mean, for Brad, for us, that was that whole nother level, right? You had a Toyota little pickup. Right. That now has air. It pops up off the ground. It's a drift truck. It's a rally truck. It's a drag truck all in one. And
it hits all the niches.
Insane with a 1,000 horsepower NASCAR Cup motor in it.
Right.
And when you started it, I think Brad said it one time, it's violent.
Right.
Like it literally, if you start it and you're close, you can feel your heart palpate. You're like, whoa. You know?
And, it's kind of like the first time I went to like a NHRA like drag, nitro drag, right? And you're sitting right on the start line like an idiot because you don't know better. And then they floor it and you're just like, oh my God, my life just changed. I need to move.
All of those, it just grew, and then the C10 Slayer, that was another one that we got to, participate in that one. And it's all matte black, crazy. I mean, that's just, that's, what can we come up with, right? What stupidity can we take? And let's just put this massive, huge, tall, overly aggressive motor into an old truck. And then let's put 4 tires in the back of it,
That's probably one of my favorite builds you've done.
It's insane. I mean, it's got its own page, performance truck and all that, but every one of those vehicles now. So, I mean, as it progressed, right now you're on Discovery Channel, things are growing. Our personal stuff's growing, and you're like, wow, people will know you. They're kind of following you, and all changes. And then now I got kids sending pictures. They are playing Forza Horizon 4, right? And they're like, hey, look we're driving the drift truck, or hey, I'm driving the performance truck. And now all these rigs I wrapped, and I mean, it's unbelievable. I believe it's Microsoft does it. They 3D scan it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, everything that we did on the outside to our logo, everyone else's, Gibson exhaust and these other guys, right? It's all in there.
So let's talk about the royalty deal here, Microsoft. We gotta work on that.
Boy, yeah. Gibson, everyone else, Ford, Toyota. But it's crazy to think now that people are going, this is amazing, and you had a part in all of that, right? They do the build, we make it look cool, and now that car, I think the drift truck to this day is the number one purchase vehicle.
Really?
Bar none. It's like 10-1 is the ratio of drift truck to anything else on Forza, which is unbelievable. I mean, you're like, wow. Now that's all Brad and them. I mean, I get like 1/1000.
We said once you arrived, then everyone paid attention. So we're going to take a little sliver of it.
We'll take it. But they've got some other things they're doing, and so we're working with them on some future things. And I mean,
well, spill the beans. I mean, no one watches this podcast.
They just got builds. A lot of the time, Brad and Doug will keep it all under wraps. They'll keep it under wraps, and then you like that, and then they'll say, "Hey, we got this idea. What do you think?" And a lot of time they'll ask me, like, Brad's really good at shoving a bunch of ideas without direction,
right?
And then come up with something, and I'm like, So we start playing, but he does have a great creative eye. Obviously he builds amazing rigs, so I throw my little bits in, we come up with something badass, and we rock and roll.
So how does that change kind of how you approach, maybe not the day-to-day, but the overall like picture of the business and the brand and how you kind of approach that? Because before that, right, you're kind of just like, I need to get exposure for my company so that I can get more jobs, to put more line items on the invoice and try to move things forward. How did that change your mindset with how do I actually approach marketing my business and being more about an image of a brand versus a company you call?
Good call.
I'm making him work, Tim.
That was a tough one because you try and anticipate, right? Where you're going, and everyone's heard the old adage, you grow too fast, that's this and that. And my thing was, I want to grow as fast as I want. I just have to stay ahead of it, right? As long as I stay ahead of it, I'm good. I don't think I did that perfectly. I think I got a little behind every once in a while, even when I thought I was ahead. But after that, the DeBertis, they sat me down and they did say, you need to take advantage of the opportunities that are here, right? And I was like, nah,
you probably didn't even know what that meant at the moment.
I didn't even know, right? And so I processed it. And on one hand, you're like, I don't want to take advantage of this or take advantage of you guys the way that it sounds, right? And so through my, cumbersome, messed up head, for me, it was leverage, right? Leverage the opportunities provided, and then use those to take advantage, right? But leverage those opportunities. So we started to try and leverage those things. Us being literally a speck of sand on the beach compared to the DeBertis being a boulder, right? I mean, you can get so much, but they still don't know who you are, right? Even to this day, I mean, we have a following, but I mean, it's not insane. We're not 1.6 million on YouTube or 3.3 or whatever, but at least we're known, right? I mean, Ford knows who we are. I've now wrapped more Ford vehicles 1 year, I think, than anybody in the history of Ford at SEMA, which was, I did 6 rigs 1 year. And I had got 30-year guys going, why is everything in here you? I mean, Ford didn't even wrap. And I'm like,
That's an interesting statement, because when you talk about OEs, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they're very, very focused on what comes off the showroom floor or the factory floor is what we push.
Ford was strict.
Especially with like Raptors and stuff, right? Like they don't want to make what they put out from the factory look less than.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So was that something you had to overcome, or was it like just a sea change with marketing in the industry?
I think industry-wise, right, we talked about the evolution and things growing. And at SEMA, if you've been there, I mean, you can see the same thing over and over. And then you see like, okay, we've got to go to the next level. Well, the next year, they're going to push again.
Right.
And then next year is going to be. And so now Ford wasn't there this year. Still was an absolutely amazing. Toyota and Lexus took over that whole thing, and they absolutely killed it. I have to say they owned that booth. Everything in there now is, you're going to have an overland section, right? And it's built out. So instead of being straight up OE, now you got build outs, you got full wraps. These are like massive builds on these vehicles. So now they're not selling just the rig, they're selling the idea of the vehicle, right? And what you can do with it, especially with the overlanding, which is huge right now. And then you go over to the little focus like STIs for Ford, or you go to Toyota, you got Supras. I think we had like 3 or 4 Supras down there, right? And they're all decked out. They got wheels, they got tires, 3-piecers, the whole thing, and they're insane. And it was a whole nother level of taking a OE car, pushing it out there and making it stand out in a sea. I mean, I don't know how many rigs are there. There's got to be, 8 to 10,000 vehicles at least. And
something you kind of mentioned is the overland side of SEMA now is like the off-road experience is kind of taking over SEMA, where it used to be all ricers and stuff. Now it's trucks and lifts and not even just like the show pony trucks, right? Not just the big wheel tubs and all that stuff. It's actually usable off-road adventure cars.
Correct.
And side-by-sides have really played a big part of that as well. And that niche is growing in that bigger media marketing world. And we're starting to see those, even like off-road cars, start to make their way into OE commercials. Like Honda's got their talents in there. They've got Toyotas with all the overland stuff on them now. And I've said it even back when we were starting the podcast and when I was getting into the off-road industry, that they really need to focus on the experience side, right? Like that's what they're selling. They're not selling, a tube chassis with shocks on it. They're selling an experience. And we've seen that happen over the last few years where they've really leaned into that, especially with their brand ambassadors and their racers and all that stuff. The racers, like the racing used to be the only place you saw sponsorships.
Correct.
And now it's like these guys that just happen to go like made a living on making a permanent family vacation out in the mountains. Like now they're giving them sponsorships. The life, so I need to figure that out, by the way. If anyone's got an in on that sponsorship, let me know. But it's interesting to see the evolution, because that plays really into the wraps, right? Like you don't see guys building, a $300,000 overland truck and throwing a custom paint job on it.
Right.
They're not doing that. They're doing wraps. And that may be for various different reasons. Maybe it's a sponsorship change every year where they have to do a new roster or, whatever.
Right.
But usually it comes down to protection.
Correct.
So how has that changed? Like it's gone from, I remember the first wraps we did back in the day with our show vehicles and stuff, where I used to work, where it was like, you just really tried very hard not to touch them because the paint would come off, or it would ding in a little bit and catch, and then you have this thing sticking out the whole time and you could never not see it again. Like, and nowadays you have these overlays, you have better materials, things like that. Is vinyl really a protection mechanism to consider, or is it just a gimmick that sells more vinyl?
It's absolutely a protection thing. I mean,
that kind of started with Clear Bra, right? Like that was kind of the originator.
So Clear Bra is its own, right? And then you got wraps. Well, if we do a wrap, a printed wrap, right? You got the vinyl itself, then you've got a clear laminate that goes over matte, satin, whatever they want. It's not as thick, right? You're not going to get the same protection as you would if you do paint protection film. But if you're going to go beating the brush out in the woods and you're, Arizona pinstriping all down the side and all that stuff, huge advantage over nothing. I mean, I've had guys go out and absolutely tear up rigs. I had one run through a barbed wire fence. Guy literally went through a barbed wire fence, got in a wreck. They called me. They said, "Hey, we need you to fix the wrap. We got in a wreck, da-da-da." I show up. I peeled it. Excuse me. I peeled it. And when I peeled it back, I actually videoed this. There was no damage. Absolutely tore the wrap. Didn't do anything to the paint. I was like, I need to video this because, and so I did. I'll find that video, Timmy. But it's a huge protection. It allows the availability of changing the design, the look, right? So if you go to SEMA one year and you go the next year, but you have essentially kind of the same rig, right? We can change it and it look a huge wheels, tires,
right?
Wrap, a couple different things, and all of a sudden you have something different than you did the year before. And I mean, cost-wise, for us to do a design of a wrap, for you to paint that design or the intricacies that go on, I mean, you're talking tens of thousands versus, $5,000 or $4,000 or $6,000. And like we did on the Tundra, that was a 2-in-1. So we did the whole entire truck in a matte PPF. So, I mean, it's extremely protected. It looks really sick on that paint. Then we do gloss overlays. So it just gives that texture difference, really makes it look good. And I mean, I can tell you, Tim's been out there absolutely bombing in the woods, and the truck still looks amazing. If it wasn't on there, we would have a $10,000 depreciation already in paint on the Tundra. But I mean, that industry in and of itself has evolved, right? It's get out in the woods, love life, live off the land. The only downfall is you got $100,000 invested in a truck. It's not, but it's totally changed in the last, I'd say, 2 to 3 years. Even before that, like people were getting it, but in the last 2-3 years, it's just taken off. And I think, not to bring up, but just what we went through for the last couple of years.
Right.
It was, people were like, I want out. I want to go spend time with family, or I want to be by myself, and I'm going to go to the woods. And so that just opened that door even wider to just be like, I'm out. I don't want to be around people. I'm going to go cruise and chill.
Right. And that was definitely what we saw in like the UTV world, right? Like before the whole COVID thing, like it was this thing where it was kind of niche. Like people that were in the industry knew what it was, why we did it, why we loved it. And then everybody outside of it was like very, very separated from it. And then during the transition of the last couple of years, people have really grasped onto the idea that you can go experience, smell, see, touch, feel. And the UTV side of it is very different because you're in it. Like it's not you're in the truck with the AC or the heater. It's you're in it. It's kind of like the crazy guys that go hike the mountains during the middle of the winter, right? Like they're in it, right? So you experience the thrill of the off-roading, but with the sensations that you get of being exposed. And we've seen a lot of that, like you said. When you talk about the paint protection films and stuff like that, we see a lot with the way YouTube and social has taken off. You see like these kids buying Lambos and all this other crazy stuff, and then they're wrapping them with these insane looking designs and all that stuff. And it always triggered in the back of my head, like, is that depreciating the car? Like, is that going to damage the paint? Is that going to make a difference with that car when that kid's done with it? Obviously the kid can be stupid and do something stupid, but is it something that's a viable, like when you're done, you just take it off and it's good as the day you put it on?
That was part of that evolution we were talking about of films over the last 20 years, 30 years, right? Is those old school films didn't have the removability. Remember, you peel a sticker.
I was going to say, because I've damaged a few cars in my day.
You literally, you peel that sticker, and wherever the sticker was, there's that whole layer of adhesive, right? And you've even seen it on vehicles that they never clean that off, and it's just a dirt round circle, or whatever the
semi-trailers or whatever.
And so nowadays, not only is it repositionable and whatnot, they've built these to be removable, right? Now, if you go to Vegas, Sacramento, Arizona, places like that, and you put a wrap on, just like paint, right? In 5 to 10 years, you don't maintain it, you don't take care of it, and you just let it fry. Your paint, especially like your silvers, your metallics, you'll just fry it. 120 degrees. I mean, so you have to be responsible. That's always the big one. Somebody says, well, my wrap is ruined. And it's like 7 years later, sitting in the sun in Arizona, on a motorhome that they didn't move and it was sat on the west side, right? It's what's going to happen. The material's a lot like, I always equate it to leather. If you maintain it, you put some oil on it, so we have like ceramic sprays that we use. Just give it a little bit of love.
Right.
It'll last a year. I've had wraps 7-9 years. And they're up here, so our environment's different, right?
Always changing.
And the company's sectioned out everywhere. So they'll give different warranties based on location, right? Southern Cal, Vegas, Arizona, you don't get the same warranty.
Like the manufacturers of the films?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so you just got to be aware of that. And so when you're talking with customers, this is what the manufacturer covers. And then, we do stuff a little bit different. We provide a craftsmanship warranty. And being the size that we're at, I don't want anybody ever being disappointed, right? So, if there's an issue, normally we address most everything. If it's been 4 or 5 years and it's just wear and tear, that's one thing.
Or if it's the guy that came in and sideswiped his truck.
Yes, yes. You're like, hey, or you can see where they hit it with a pressure washer. That's always the best one, and they've literally destroyed it. And they're like, man, I was just washing it by hand,
Yeah.
And like, I can
You scrub
see
really
the
hard.
pressure washer mark, you've literally put my initials in there. So, the protection of it and the removability of it is bar none improved in the last 10 years, especially. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of adhesive left over. We just clean it up. We have a detailer on site. We'll clean the rig. And when you get it back, essentially your paint is new.
Right. Do you guys have to clay them and do all that before you apply, or is
a lot of the time we'll do, we'll clean the rig, wipe it down, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll clay bar it. Then we'll wrap it. And then usually we'll do, the final cleaning, go over a wrap with a ceramic spray, and we'll ceramic, not a high end one, your $1,000, $2,000 ceramics, but a good 3 to 6 month. And we'll like, hey, we've
just
done this, we're doing this. We offer the stuff if you want it. No,
right.
But if you do, once a quarter.
So explain to people
months.
what ceramic spray does. We've seen a lot of marketing around that recently in the last, 2 years, where it's become a big marketing piece in a lot of stuff,
right.
especially with trucks.
Yep.
So what does the ceramic do, not only in general, but to a wrap? What is it actually? What's its job? What's it doing?
So essentially, imagine just adding a layer of, almost like a clear coat on a super generic term, right? It's adding a little clear that's a little bit harder over the top of whatever to maintain less swirling, scratching, all that.
So it's not a wax.
No. Wax, when you go old school, and you look at like the old like carnubas, right? If you were to put carnuba and you go out to the beach, right, and you just kind of fling a little sand past it, it's going to stick all to it, right? Concept-wise, that's really not what you want. You don't want to stick stuff to it. So simply put, ceramics take and fill gaps in your paint or your wrap or whatever. Everything we do is porous, right? So there's ridges. And the goal in a windshield, anything, is to slowly fill those ridges. If you go a high-end ceramic, you're really filling those up with a really hard clear. And it basically makes it, how they talk about hydrophobic, everything rolls off. Well, imagine if you get rid of those ridges and you flatten stuff out, nothing has the opportunity to stick, be it dirt and all that kind of stuff. So on a wrap, same concept. We're just trying to take the porousness of the wrap, put something on there, give them some longevity right off the bat, and promote, hey, if you take care of this, it will last you longer. And not everybody does it. Most
right.
people, they're like, I'm going to go through the car wash. It's a work rig, whatever it is. We just try and at least start them off on the right foot.
So you talked a little bit about the movability and the breathability of wrapping materials. When we talk about side-by-sides, for example, right? Like when we talk about a truck, to redirect, if we talk about a truck, it's for the most part fairly flat. as far as just in general.
Right.
We could talk about trailers and all that. Those are all flat except for the rivets and whatever. But, for the most part, a truck, you got some curves, you got some fenders, you got some mirrors, things like that. But for the most part, it's a big flat canvas.
Correct.
When we talk about a side-by-side, some side-by-sides are a little bit more curvy than others. Some have more cuts than others. Some have some really drastic changes than others. If you compare a Can-Am versus a Polaris, Polaris is more boxy, the Can-Am's more curvy. When we talk about those materials and working them, is it something that like you can just go on Amazon and buy a sheet of like white or whatever and then just expect to be in your garage putting that down? Tell us about the maybe some of that complexity of how that works and what you have to do to make that look good.
First off, if you go to Amazon and buy stuff, don't bring it to me. Let's just start there, right?
Unless you're taking it off.
Yeah, it's normally that is the stuff. I mean, we could dive into, I'm one of those like sciencey guys. I love to dive into how the films are made, all the composition of it, all the different layers from the adhesive layer to the primer layer, which is how it holds the adhesive to the vinyl, all these different things, right? Because it makes a difference in the application and the removability. But you get, just like anything, companies that will manufacture something at a better cost or whatever and cheaply, and then they're like, hey, you want to use this? And I just...
Or just old school technology.
Yep. I just don't want my name on that product. I mean, it's like, I can guarantee you this will fail. I can guarantee you this will look like this. After doing stuff and playing with vinyl for 20 years, I've seen what will and won't work. I'm not guessing. I know,
right.
and so when it comes to that type of stuff, try and stay away from it. We sell tons of vinyl. We have leftover stuff. I mean, people are like, hey, I want to do this. I'm all about like DIY stuff, right? Helping people, training them. Get good stuff. 3M, Avery, KPMF, things like that. Hopefully all those guys heard that. So, but getting the right vinyl, and then like you talked about doing the side-by-sides, there's a big difference in rounded or flat curves versus 90 degrees, which on those things, you've got angles, right? Hard angle. And the biggest thing in wrapping is typically those recesses. People see what you call popping or tenting, right? Where it's in a V like this and it pops out. Right. And that's why having the right material, like we talked about, getting more tackiness or things of this sort, having one that has good stretchability. You don't want to overstretch, but you can go, you got 120, 130%, things like that you can use and take advantage of. And then nowadays, we have knifeless tape, which cuts the vinyl from the back. So it's like running pinstriping from the old days. Prior to, this is where I want to have a seam because that angle's so tight.
Right.
I know I'm going to have a failure. If I don't get this right, I want to do a super clean seam. It's not visible. It's in a spot that just looks really nice. And you'll do that for the longevity of it. Most round things, trucks, cars, all that, you one piece. Those, a lot of the time, you'll do them more in parts or in the templating, right? Where you won't even go into that.
Right.
Like
you design around it.
We'll have that like little 1/8" pullback from a super tight thing because it's just not going to hold, right? And so you kind of create that Tron effect or whatever, and you do it that way, and it just gives that longevity that you're looking for.
And we have a trend in our industry with obviously people replace their cages and stuff to be more safe and things like that. And a lot of times those will come with custom doors and things that associated with rooftops and all that. And those make the wrap application way easier because they're usually a lot more flat, a lot more less complicated.
And those aftermarket doors? Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
That's like the first question on the phone call. Price went up $100.
Yep. Love it.
But the trend in our industry is to start seeing roof wraps and branding and all these different things to even people that aren't brands themselves. Right. And so when you guys approach a design, do you just always jump to a printed design, or do you consider the fact that maybe you are going to do a layer or something like that with these off-road vehicles that are going to be brushing up against stuff?
It's always open and up in the air until you hear what that person has in mind, right? I mean, if they're like, I want a flag, right? I want kind of a tattered flag or something down the side. That's where you can do like, OD green, wrap it in an OD green and maybe a matte or a gloss finish on that. And then do the reverse, right? So if we do a matte OD green, we do a gloss flag on it. That looks really good. Kind of gives that pop, subtle, whole thing all in one. And then they come in, like even we did the one for Corbin. We talked about Chris Corbin and his wife Kim and what they do. So he builds some crazy stuff. But that's all branding. So everything we do for him is a printed thing. And so we template it out. He brings it down. And he's really good about knowing, hey, we've got to set this stuff up. So he'll just drop it off, let me know when it's ready. Yeah. I'm not going to sit on it forever, but templating it, making sure that when we go to put it on, it's going to look exactly what we proof out to him. Because we send a proof, right? We get pictures of the vehicle, make it look like what it's going to look like. And then that way, when we roll out what we did, there's not I didn't know it was going to look like that. It's within 1/4 inch or less is always our goal,
right?
Of exactly what you saw.
So when we talk about taking these cars off-road and doing all that, an overland truck, for the most part, really only has to worry about rocks flying up from the tires and rubbing up against shrubs, right? That's kind of the typical truck stuff, unless you got a rock crawler guy or whatever. Right. But with a UTV, like, everything's open. Like, it's all game. If it's in the way, it's game.
Yep.
What kind of advice would you have to somebody that maybe is into a new UTV, is looking to wrap it, to get their branding, their company, whatever the case is, but also have a play car, right? Like, what are some of the advice and tips you give people on a day-to-day that helps have a better experience with that investment?
So when we do it, this is funny because we're talking about like a $30,000 UTV, and then you talked about cages and everything else, right? We buy a $30,000 UTV, and by the time we're done, we have a $70,000 UTV.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, and even the new ones are $50,000 out the door. So
yeah, the new ones are getting to where we don't have to do as much of that. But if somebody's going to do that, I like to template and have those gaps that we talked about, because you are going to rub things, you are going to hit rocks, you're going to do things. If it's pieced versus an entirety type wrap, that allows, like, hey, I jacked up this section. We can replace singular sections a lot easier than we can do a whole entire door, right? If we wrap that in one piece, now we got to do the whole door. Whereas if it just hit the lower section, well, that's awesome, right? It's time saver, money saver, all that kind of stuff. And
if you can take advantage of the base canvas, is what you're saying, right? Yep.
And use the angles to help create that look, right? When you wrap the whole thing, sometimes you lose some of that. So if we do, like we talked about, kind of that Tron effect where you leave a little bit of gap in certain areas, you take advantage of the style of that thing, be it a Polaris or a Can-Am or whatever, and at the same time create the ability to, I jacked this one up, we can fix that and replace it quickly, versus we got a whole panel door, whatever it is that we're doing.
Right. And so when we take a look at the base canvas of the car itself, right? Over the last, I think it's about 5 years, before that, everything was just black. And then they threw some vinyl stickers on top and said, that's our color.
Yep.
Now we're starting to see where the plastics themselves are being injected, molded with various color plastics. And these guys are buying them. They're like, oh yeah, I'll just wrap it. Like, I'm not worried about the fact that plastic's a different color.
Right.
And then we're getting into a situation where now we have newer plastics on the newer cars that are, I don't know, is the more silicon in the plastic or something that makes them slicker, to shed off mud and dirt and whatever, right? What do you say when someone's like, I just want the whole thing wrapped? Like, where's the compromise, and what do you do to it to kind of?
We try and guide, as best as you can, right? The first and foremost, wrapping those things, the amount of time that it takes to wrap it, right? The labor intensive, we'll use the Polaris, the new front end of a Polaris, right? It comes down, you got the headlamps, and it does kind of a
right.
There's so many angles to that. To do that one piece without failure is pretty slim.
Right.
And so there's certain things that you're like, you're not gonna wrap. It's just not.
One of the most common ones I see is everyone saying they want the wheel well to match. Right. And you're talking about, a lot of them have those little stick out pieces that cause problems. But let alone the fact that that's like the most damaged part of the plastic on the car.
Yes.
But when people say, I want the whole thing white,
Yep.
Right. Is that the time where you say maybe you're better off going to paint first and then doing decals? Mm-hmm. Or
I mean, you have, endpoints of what you can and can't do. And at the same time, you have a reputation that you want to, and I would rather say this is maybe not the best scenario for us to do, right? There's other options for you that I think looking out for the customer to get the outcome and the expectation that they want, certain areas are going to be better. If they do, if it's like, I want to wrap this and they really want to do it, we have to do a tester first off, make sure we're going to be able to. The biggest thing when it comes to that, motorcycle plastics, UTVs, snowmobiles, all that kind of stuff is you got to remember that's a petroleum-based product, right?
Right.
So a petroleum-based product is always gassing off. There is a certain amount of a gas off coming off of it. And
I don't think people realize that. Like the plastics on your car breathe.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. And so if it's breathing, like especially on a gas tank of a motorcycle, right? People are like, I can't get the stuff to stick. I mean, you imagine that thing's just seeping the gases out. So it's literally pushing everything off. Snowmobiles, the big one is people want to make them, super thick, right? I mean, the graphics like an 8-inch thick, which they're like, well, so that way it's durable. It's durable. It's not going to get scratched, but it becomes so rigid and hard in those freezing temperatures that it just flakes off. The whole thing just comes off in one big chunk, right? So I've typically done kind of an in-between. There's some thicker laminate. Sometimes I'll run 2 sets of laminate. So I'll run it through the laminator and I'll run it again. So if I use a thicker lam already, I get about 4.2 mils of clear, which is not your 10 mil that they do on those other ones, but I can heat and roll it.
Right.
And
kind of
really
give it some,
get it to grab. And I have sleds that I've done years and years ago. I had one that was 10 years ago that still looked amazing. It's just doing it the right way to begin with, and those new plastics, there's options. I mean, people talk about torching them, heating them, things like that. You can burn off some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. You have to just be aware that, if you do certain things, sometimes you can actually make it so you'll stick to those plastics well, but you may, in the process, change the characteristics of the plastics. So if you didn't put anything on or you pull them off, it's not going to look the same. Yeah,
there's always a reaction to anything you do, right? There's always another side to it. When we talk about people's vehicles and the way they travel, everyone that has a side-by-side has a truck and a trailer and a, whatever, usually a dirt bike in the back or a quad for the kid or whatever. When it comes down to doing everything to kind of like match, that's been the big trend, like down in Glamis and things like that. The truck matches the trailer, the car matches the truck, like everything kind of is like this team effect, right? Is that something that people should be even like considering? Is that something that is just over the top, or do you see a lot of that happening up here?
I just see dollar signs.
I like it. If you've got it, do it, right?
My thing is, if you're looking at truck, trailer, all that kind of stuff, you could be 5-10 G's or more in a heartbeat. Yeah. If somebody wants to spend that kind of money, if they've got that kind of money, I'm all about cohesiveness and that. I dig it. My OCD with the ADD, I'm in, right? But at the same time, those people, they understand the investment. They already they have a truck, a trailer, and on all the toys, right? So they're X amount of dollars already into it.
Yeah, they're $500,000 going down the road already.
So if they're like, well, I'm going to pay $10,000, I'm going to make everything look the same, I would do exactly the same.
Do you see a lot of guys doing their RVs? Because you see the RVs in the lots, like half of them all look the same, but they all have some sort of big swooshy whatever on it.
We do. It's again, just like the UTVs, I can do a full entire truck in probably the same amount of time that I do a UTV. And so it's the labor end of it is, you've got to pay for the labor more than the materials, right? UTVs are one thing. Motorhomes, you can sometimes do them a little bit quicker, but caulking, windows, all the things that you got to go around, again, different than just doing a rig. Maybe pop a couple door handles and a mirror and boom, you roll. Those motorhomes, that's huge. Now you're scaffolding
lots of parts.
And it's labor and then the size of the material. An average vehicle is 300-400 square feet. If you wrap the whole entire thing, you look at a motorhome and now you're 700 feet, right? We're doing semi-trailers. They're 900 to 1,000 square feet of material. And if you're 10, 15, 20 bucks, whatever the material is per square foot, it starts to
starts to add up pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then just the fact that it's not one guy doing it, right? You have to start now stacking people on it and getting that thing done with multiple hands.
I mean, you can do it. It's just time and money, right? And so if we can accomplish this job, because our jobs are bid out by the job, they're not bid out by the hour. And so we'll do this job. So if you can accomplish that job in, a fraction of the time using multiple people, more money made.
So talking about business and marketing, you guys have recently started to move more into content generation and things like that, and integrating with other brands and stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about kind of that transition to YouTube and what you guys are doing there.
It was that, so like the birdies, right? That was the kicker, and that started to grow it. And then, marketing wise, I mean, part of our thing is as a marketing company, somebody comes in and they want to market. We had to market ourselves and what's working. And, you got newspaper, radio, things like that, right? and I mean, how many of the generation from 30 and under have even picked up a newspaper or really dive into a magazine, right? When they've got a phone that can do anything and everything. So we really found social media was a place we wanted to be. So that's where we did our marketing. And then with the birdies and other things, then it was like people kind of wanted this, well, what are you guys doing? So then we're like, well, let's have a little more fun. And then we had a little more fun. And then you get monetized, maybe make a couple of bucks. And so you're like, well, now we're getting paid to do a little bit of this stuff, right? We're getting paid to show
market our company.
videos of what we do to get paid, right? And so you're like, let's do more of that, right? As a biz owner, I'm like, let's maximize it. Plus it's fun, right? It changes it up. We get to do things that bring in, like you being here, we're having fun. We get to do stuff and talk about all these things that we've been doing. And then that brings in more and more people. I mean, now Max Powell over on the coast, working with him, Grindhard Plumbing. Everybody knows Grindhard. I mean, they're build just insane stuff. The DeBirdies, we got a couple other one. We just had at SEMA. We got to work with B is for Build. That was total random.
So you went to SEMA. How was it, a month ago now?
Yeah, the first week of November.
And then you ended up almost like your origin story at SEMA.
Yeah,
where you just ended up working on someone's car.
Yeah.
How did that go down?
That was, I mean,
and for those that don't follow B for Build, I mean, he started also like in his garage, just wrenching on his own, making his own content, and all of a sudden he exploded.
Yep.
So kind of give us a rundown on what you did there.
It was, and that's literally where I started, was in my garage. The only reason I have a shop is my wife was tired of all the stuff in the garage. Flat broke. Timmy was out wandering around. I ended up rapping and doing some graphics and stuff for some people, and then somebody would see it and say, hey, can you help me out? And
do you go to SEMA like, I'm gonna bring all my tools, always, all my a truck, half truck full of vinyl? And
always, because I never end up not doing stuff. And now that I've done more and more, people know, and they're like, hey Sammy, hey, you can, and it always evolves to, I think that day I was like, I got a couple of hours, right, of stuff to do. I thought I'd have a couple hours. All of a sudden, I'm like 6 hours into my day already. And then Timmy's like, hey, Sam, these guys need some help. You want to come give them a hand? So I'm like, sure, I'll run over there. We can bang out another hour or two, help somebody out. No clue. I mean, I have no idea what's going on. I'm walking up, and there's 3 or 4 guys, and they've got one little piece of vinyl like this big, and they're trying to put it just on this flat section. And I'm watching, and I'm like, what are these guys doing? And I thought, I'll just help them do whatever they're doing. We'll get that done, and I'll get out of here. It's dinner time. Let's do this. And I'm looking at my boy Timmy, because he was there, but he knew. I didn't know. I didn't know.
Oh, you knew who it was?
He knew who B is for Build is. I didn't know who B is for Build, and I create a bunch, and I do so much stuff now that I don't get on as much as I used to. I kind of like, I'm good. I just mellow, right? So we're meeting with these guys, and they're like, yeah, we could totally use a hand. And I, said, what do you need? And he goes, well, I want to wrap the whole car. Now,
explain the car real quick.
Yeah. So this is like an F1 style home built race car.
Yeah.
This thing's insane. Like it's mostly flat. Like everything's pretty flat except for the fenders. But like all of a sudden I'm wrapping a whole car. When I got over there, it was like 4:30, 5 o'clock. It's outside. We're under the monorail section. So there's no lighting. I mean, they're 25 feet up. They didn't work, or they were so dim. And I'm like, okay, so what do I do here? And I, in a nice way, I'm like, I need nobody to try and do anything. You just gotta stay out of the way. I'm like, how much vinyl you got? And I mean, I think I got done. I had maybe 2 or 3 square feet of vinyl. Like no table, no nothing. I'm like trying
you
to
stretched every inch of it.
I'm going, holy cow. So I start just rapping, doing my thing. Timmy's filming. Those guys, I mean, they're super nice. They're chatting with me, but all of a sudden people are walking up like in droves. And the show's technically not even open. This is kind of pre-show stuff. Next morning is when it opens. So I'm like, I got to wrap this whole car at like 5 o'clock at night. I'm like, I know this is going to be 6-7 hours. So I didn't get done till 11 o'clock, 11:30, something like that.
Was it that long? Because you're talking about, I mean, the car itself, you look at it, you're like, there's not much car there to wrap.
He wanted to wrap everything. And if you look at the car, like there were areas where I could barely reach. Like it's right. It was crazy. And then he's got these spiky
because you have to continue
things.
It all the way
gosh,
in. Yeah.
Yes. And he's like, well, I want to do black here and like charcoal here and silver here.
Did they have all that? Or?
They had 3 different colors. And so I just kind of had to, and I'm like, we only got X amount. This is what we're going to do. And I mean, it turned out great, but, and it probably, I mean, if I was inside, temperature was better, had light, that would have been awesome.
I think so. Was somebody holding the phone over you for a little while?
Tim had a phone. We had I mean, it was crazy. I'm holding my phone trying to rap, and we finished it all up. But as we were cruising, people just kept coming up to this guy, and I'm like, man, what is this guy? Must be somebody. And I'm watching, and they're like, hey, can I get my picture with you? And like, big deal. Not 1 or 2 people. Like, it was over and
not
over
just,
and
oh,
over.
hey, yeah, no, okay,
and
yeah.
They're like, oh, this is the car. And I mean, people knew this. And
right.
I mean, this is like, nobody's supposed to even be here. And it's droves of people coming in.
Right.
And so I asked Tim, he's like, you got to look up B is for build. And I look it up. Here they are, like 1.6, 1.7 million followers on YouTube. And you're like, wow, like these guys are real deal. We did that whole thing. He bought us dinner. We hung out, made a great relationship with him. I have zero doubt that we'll work with them in the future. I mean, none whatsoever. Probably the coolest thing I have to say is we got back, and it was whenever that video posted. I don't remember exactly when the video posted was, but
your video?
Their video.
Their video.
Yep. They posted a video. Once it showed up, I started getting emails from his followers. Mm-hmm. They would leave
research
YouTube, find us,
yeah.
And they were sending thank you letters. Really? Yeah. Like, thank you so much. I mean, just, and I kept getting them over and over. And I'm like, what the heck? And then we started getting them through Instagram, and they would find us on Instagram, and they were sending thank yous through messages on Instagram. I'm going, so I called Chris up, and I'm like, Chris, this guy, I don't know what you do, but your following is, I have to say, probably the best following I've ever seen, heard. Your customers, your followers love you so much that they took time to research and send thank you letters to me for helping you. Right. Like, have you ever, I've never.
And I think that comes from the fact that he's one of them. Right? Like he started in the garage, he started making the videos online. Mm-hmm. People were doing their projects at home. He was doing his project online. He just happened to be making the content and giving people a place to talk and chat. And that car culture community that we lost for a number of years is starting to come back and have a resurgence. And when you start your brand in an authentic way, and you bring everybody along with the ride. I tell companies all this when I consult with companies. It's like, be authentic, show your downfalls, show your wins, your losses, your funny moments, all those things, because all that does is it brings that customer loyalty right along with you. Right. And that's what you were experiencing, right? Is like this guy's built this authentic relationship with his community. Phenomenal. And it's just continued to expand and expand and expand. And it's that whole, like, if we all work together, we all win together type mentality, right? And so that's just the result of that, I think.
100%. I mean, when I called Chris and told him that, that his personality exuded why I got all those letters. Mm-hmm. The guy was humble. He was nice. And all those people that showed up, that guy stopped whatever he was doing every single time, talked with every single person, took pictures, did whatever. Like that's somebody that you hope that like kids will idolize, right? Instead of some of these other things that they see, because it was just a good, genuine person, right? He just fought cancer. He's done all these things. So I called him, we just chatted and we hit it off again, a lot like the DeVertis, just good people that want to work together, right? It's, I'm going to do whatever I can. If I get something out of it, great. If I don't, I didn't know anything going in. So I wasn't there for anything, right? Except to help somebody that was in a pinch. I mean, I have to wrap a whole entire car from 4 o'clock at night or 5 o'clock at night and have it ready for SEMA the next day. And I'm just going, holy cow, you know, and
it's not like you didn't have anything to do the next day, right?
Yeah. So it was an amazing experience. So, I mean, now we've got BS for Build, and between Grindhard and Max Powell and these guys, and we have a few others that we're working with, really hope that our goal is, these are all car people, right? I mean, and it doesn't matter if it's an overlander or
a grocery getter or
whatever, just making cool content so people that dig vehicles can hopefully come and watch and have fun with us, right? And we're getting to maybe share with them, like we might have followers that didn't know who B is for Build is, or didn't know who Grindhard is, or didn't know who Max is. And so now everyone's kind of like, man, these guys are all just working together and they're making cool stuff to watch and have fun. I mean, honestly, who watches TV hardly anymore, right? You'll hop on Netflix or whatever, and if you're not there, people are on YouTube, and they can watch these things. And so if we make fun stuff for them to watch, in the process, maybe make a few bucks so that you can continue to make the content. That's always the goal.
So I heard you have a special relationship with Stallone.
Oh my gosh. That's what my brand manager says, huh? So
I think you win the lookalike contest for Halloween next year.
He's been with me a bunch of times. I mean, you know, we did Swolvester Stallone is what they were called. That way we don't get yelled at by, you know, the true sly guy, right? But you know, we show up and I show up as Swolvester and Timmy was doing his thing, Max was doing his thing, and we just had fun and
so tell us a little bit about that. What was that video all about?
Anywhere I go, and Tim's been with me, I get a lot of, you know, you look like, especially if I don't have my beard or I have just a goatee, like right now, the new show Tulsa that he came out with, right? I guess he's got a goatee. I had just a goatee, and we're sitting down at a restaurant. I think we had 3 ladies in the period of like 15 minutes come up and say, you nut, and I'm like, oh my, yes. I've heard that once or twice before, right? And it's cool. You know, I think it comes down to, you know, heritage, obviously, and I look like him. I got the eyeballs, and if I talk like this, you know, that makes it, you know, yo, Adrian, you know, that type of thing.
Oh, shit, we just got demonetized.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should just go.
Old enough.
You should
now.
go
he
to,
wants somebody to say that.
You should go to SEMA like that one year and just walk around.
That's what we talked about. Like, do we do, like at some point, you know, you create stuff, right? And you do things, but how much more do you have to push and how much crazier do you have to get? So my big thing is, I mean, we're really trying to push to YouTube. We want to have fun, and it's hard to do a reel 3 minutes and show everything, right? Or something like that. So we would do videos, which, you know, has taken, I have a Timmy, who's my social media guy, now brand manager. I mean, all of this, and we storyboard and we come up with plans and ideas, and then we kind of let things roll, which is especially what you got to do with me. You don't know what I'm going to do. I just kind of whatever and go with it.
Hey, Tim, how often does a storyboard get blown to smithereens with Sammy?
There's some things that just...
And so in making all of this, we're creating that fun stuff, and we're trying to create something that people can enjoy. And so my respect, I was just telling him yesterday, like, and you'll understand this, right? If you've got 1.6 million or 1.3 million YouTube followers, like I thought that was big, and let's try and get there, right? Once you try and do it, you're like,
you realize
that's a whole nother level, right?
Yeah.
And then we were looking at another company that I won't say because I don't think we get to yet, but they got like 3.7 million. And so then I'm like a whole nother level of respect when you realize what it takes to get those, right?
And it's not overnight.
Without me flopping anything around or whatnot,
There might be a place for that. We can work on that.
So if it would gain followers, but I seriously doubt me throwing anything out there would gain followers.
So when you talk about working with these guys and all that, that has to change the dynamic of the workplace and how everyone works together and communicates and all that, and brings a different atmosphere to the shops, especially when you're pushing so much volume to try to keep the lights on, right? Mm-hmm. Like you have to bring some of that fun in there. And I would assume that everyone's enjoyed having the banter around the office.
I think, the big one is like even the rap guys, right, that worked with me, when they realize, like when they come here, you don't want to be cocky, but you work at, CW Wraps, right? We have been on Discover. We do things. The level and the expectation, right? When somebody walks through our door, it's different. They're like, this is CW. We want the wow factor. We want the experience, not just, hey, can you throw a wrap on there, blah, blah. They want that whole thing. So when customers walk in, we're trying to give them the full experience of it, and that has to be like, even right now, right? We're sitting here at a table and all that, and we just literally.
And thank you for building the set just for me. Yes. I arrived today and there was nothing, and then there was something. So
and it was like my whole team came in and helped put everything together so that we could have a spot to do this that's a little better than just sitting, in my truck or wherever it is, right?
I've done shows from side by side, by the way.
Yeah.
Not unheard of.
I think it gives, at least I hope it does, the team, like, we're all part of this. I wouldn't be doing this without Timmy. I wouldn't be doing this without these guys. And so, I kind of am the front man, the face guy, but those people are more than 100% supportive of doing it and seeing what it does and what it brings to us. And my goal is like, hey, if you guys want, man, come along. Let's see how far the ride goes and come with me. And let's have fun and let's kick butt. And as those things progress, the adventures that we're going to get to have and the stories and all that kind of stuff, I'm hoping gets better and better.
So when we talk about, the future, what are you guys looking forward to? Is there any new technology? Is there any new projects? Is there anything show-wise that you're looking forward to? We're at the end of the year. Things are wrapping up and going into, in the side-by-side world, it's like desert racing is really starting to become the big thing. And then once we get into spring, then it'll be show season for getting out and experiencing stuff. For you guys, what are you guys looking forward to with the year change? How's things move forward?
Good question. And we're on.
I told you I'm making them work today.
Yeah.
Should we talk to the?
Yeah. No. So all of you have a business, right, that has to create dollars, right? So our business division, and I'm going to separate like the business division, and then there's the fun part, right? And you'll see me do all these things. Like if I rappel away, those are not our big money makers, right? It's when I got 3 semi-trailers coming in a day and we wrap all of those for X amount of dollars. That's what makes the money.
Right.
So you've got to run that biz, but at the same time, what do we want to do on the other end of it? And mine is, I want to have more fun on the YouTube. I want to create content where we can teach some people. We can share with them, do DIYs. I want to get enough people engaged that we can focus on helping people learn it, do some stuff on their own, and at the same time have some fun. And the fun comes into really growing and working more with the BS for Builds, the Grind Hards, and some of these other companies where when you have things like, the Cannonball Run or the Gumball Run or Gold Rush, which we've gotten to be a part of for several years.
What are you doing with the Gold Rush?
Gold Rush, doing rigs for the Gold Rush.
Oh, just the trucks?
Cars, like the Maseratis and all that, and Ferraris and Lambos in the Gold Rush, and they run 150 miles an hour from point A to point B and party like rock stars. My goal would be, I would love to get to the point where we don't just do the cars. Right. I want to participate. Right. And like, all right, y'all are coming with me for the ride. Right?
I've seen you participate in some supercars every once in a while.
We've had, the last, was it the McLaren 720? That was insane. I got pushed into it. That's not a cheap thing to go do. When I got done, I was like, oh man, that was worth it. Yeah, we kept it, speed limit 65 miles an hour. We were totally behaved in that whole entire event, right? amazing film editing. But if we could do that and build it, then, we can bring people in to more of what we do and create that experience, right? So working with more of these people to get to experience, supercars or overlanding or the UTV section and getting to play and have more fun. The rock crawler, we just got brought into the mix of everything. I think that would be the direction. And we have a few people we're chatting with that are, the bigger, cool people. The benefit is the more we do with these guys, the more people are seeing it. Not seeing a huge return on our end, but
it takes
we're
a while.
having fun kicking butt, and I'll absolutely do that regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes what we do enjoyable, and the team gets to be a part of it, and we'll take that all day long.
So is there going to be a fleet of mini jet boats here soon for C-Dub?
Boy, mini jet boat would be.
I mean, how cool is that little
my gosh.
unit? Did you get to go out in it?
This year, by the time we finished it and it was rolling, it was getting cold like fast.
We're talking about the grind hard.
Yes. Yep.
Mini boat.
The pink boat, right?
Yeah.
The super pink.
Was it a Barbie? Was that the theme?
That was his stuff's always kind of like, they just do something different. And,
well, I mean, he makes Barbie Jeeps, so I mean, it's all.
Yeah. And so I was supposed to, at least Swolvester was maybe going to go for a ride. But it got so cold so quick. Timmy got to go out and hang out and do some filming with them and goof off. I'm pretty sure that we'll get to play with a mini
revisit
jet
that
boat.
in the spring?
Yes. By all means, we'll have that. And we got a few other things planned. We're going to do a winter thing, I think, with Grindhard and Max, and see if we can get some other guys involved and go do just.
You got to tell him
whatever.
to stop building cars that don't have bodies on them.
Oh my gosh!
His last one didn't even have a body to it.
Wheels, axles, motor, and a single seat, right? Singular, right in the middle. I'm like, that's intense. That's a
for
whole
sure.
nother level.
Well, I appreciate you letting me come down to the shop.
Yeah.
We've been here before getting a number of cars wrapped and side-by-sides wrapped and all that stuff. And you work with so many people in our Northwest industry, right? A lot of communal aspect up here. And I mean, you guys do even like cop cars and all sorts of different stuff.
Those are the money makers, right? The fleets. Yes, sir.
Government bids are awesome. But I'm looking forward to it. I like I told Timmy, I was really starting to notice that you've started to push into media and content creation and all that stuff. And I'm excited because it's pretty rare that a business has somebody that can be a face man. Most businesses are all grind hard guys that are getting their nose down to the work and the books and all that. It's pretty rare that you actually have somebody already in house that's able to do in front of the camera. And so when you do have that, it's exciting to watch it happen because it always gets new and grows and gets exciting. And so, Tim, I'm going to keep you up to keeping this guy going because I want to see the content.
Everybody enjoys it. I got to tell you, if I look on that camera right there, I look at myself and I don't like the way I sound, don't like the way I look. It's totally different when you are in it, right?
Yeah.
And then you evaluate it
I'll put the Snapchat filter on there.
Yeah.
So where can people follow what you're doing, see some of the builds that you've done and kind of connect with you guys and, follow up with you?
So you've got, obviously all the social medias. So we've got TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, at CWRaps, CWWRAPS.com is the website. And YouTube, which the YouTube, we change that one up a little bit just in case anything changes in the future, right? So you have
Sammy.
Sammy.
Swolvester.
Yeah. Oh man, totally should do that. That's great. So we did the YouTube is Sammy C-Dub.
Okay.
It was CW Wraps, but for some reason we split off or do anything. We want to maintain that consistency no matter what, or business name change, whatever. So Sammy C-Dub on YouTube, and that has all of our CW Wraps, me, whatever craziness we're doing. And hopefully people will jump on there and hang out and give me more motivation to play, do stuff, spend money.
And if you have any ideas for Swolvester to do, he'll take any of the DMs.
Yep.
And if you want to get what's that program where you can pay people to send you videos, like celebrities and whatnot?
I don't know.
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So we can get that whole whole new income stream for you.
Dude, just send me. I always tell people, send me ideas. Cameo.
Yeah, we'll get Swolvester on a Cameo.
Yep. And just go for it. Send ideas, whatever you want to see. Builds. We had fun building the Tundra this year. That was a kick butt one for Decked, which was an amazing company to work for. But I want to do something.
Was that your camera or my camera? Okay.
I want to do something more intense this year. I want to come up with something, and that's the hard part, like we talked about, right?
Yeah.
SEMA's always got the biggest and the best, so you got to come up with something. And so if anybody's got ideas, we'll do it.
Or cars to donate.
Yes. Yep.
So thanks for joining me. Thanks to the whole crew for having us out and building me a whole set. Highly appreciate that. Hope you enjoyed the donuts.
Yes.
You can find our podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeart, all those different places, as well as YouTube, along with Sammy C. Dub. You can see his beautiful Swolvester face. And you guys can give us a 5-star if you like it, if you liked him, if you like what we do. And if not, give us a thumbs down because we deserve it. So until the next time, guys, peace.